welcome back to All About That Disney Life. I am Danny B, the girl who is all about that Disney life. We now move on to our next attraction for Magic Kingdom. It is the Hall of Presidents, which is located in the Liberty Square section of the park. So let's get to know about this amazing, iconic attraction. So it was first going to be called One Nation Under God, and that was Walt Disney's idea. So here's what happened. Walt Disney had originally wanted an attraction similar to the Hall of Presidents called One Nation Under God at Disneyland. After Disneyland had become a huge success, Disney proposed an extension of Main Street USA called Liberty Street at Edison Square. Disney originally wanted wax figures of all the United States presidents and later decided to try to make them animated figures, but the technology that he wanted for this attraction didn't exist or fully meet his expectations. Disney decided to collaborate with his fellow Imagineers of WED Enterprises. That is basically Walt Disney Imagineering. It was called WED Enterprises back in the day, and WED is Walt Disney's initials, Walter Elias Disney, so that's why it was called WED Enterprises. So he collaborated with the Imagineers to try to make the first audio animatronic figure in a human form, and it would be one of Disney's heroes, Mr. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the United States. So the idea of transforming that human animatronic into Mr. Abraham Lincoln gave us the attraction, which is at Disneyland, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and here are the facts on that. Disney and his Imagineers created an audio animatronic figure of Abraham Lincoln more advanced than the ones produced for the Illinois Pavilion at the 1964 to 1965 New York World's Fair. The show consisted of a pre-show movie on a screen with a depiction of paintings done to represent Illinois. Guests then entered the main theater, where the theater curtains eventually were removed to reveal the figure of Abraham Lincoln sitting in a chair. He rose out of the chair, stood up, and gave a speech lasting 5 to 7 minutes, consisting of a collection of his famous speeches. The show ended with more theater curtains revealing the rotunda of the United States Capitol building. While the original version of the show that played in New York during its showing at the fair was eventually dismantled and demolished, a similar version was created for Disneyland. It was created even while the fair was going on in 1965. So let's move on to the concept of Liberty Square and what happened there, because that's where the Hall of Presidents is. So let's move on to the facts on how that got happened. After Disney's death on December 15th, 1966, plans were moving ahead for Walt Disney World. Since there was going to be another Disneyland-themed park, this time it was going to be called Magic Kingdom. Imagineers felt that one of the changes that would differ between Disneyland and Magic Kingdom should be in one of the themed lands. The Imagineers decided that since Florida was closer to the real New Orleans in Louisiana, having a New Orleans Square in Magic Kingdom was a bit redundant or just didn't make sense. The old designs and concepts for Disney's Liberty Street at Edison Square were reviewed, revised, and what became of it was Liberty Square that served as the alternative to New Orleans Square. Liberty Square also serves as the alternative location for Magic Kingdom's version of the Haunted Mansion attraction, because the version at Disneyland, the Haunted Mansion version at that park, is in the New Orleans Square section. The Imagineers also thought that as a follow-up to Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, they could finally create Disney's concept of One Nation Under God, and here we are, we have the Hall of Presidents. So let's move on to the facts about the attraction itself. The show begins with a movie presentation of the history of the United States of America. It shows that the American way was forged through conflict and many long years of struggle. The main idea of the movie is that the United States is not free from improvements. It is certain changes that prove necessary over the years. The movie also celebrates the liberties of the American people, the United States Constitution, and the progress of America in its early years. So let us talk about the many versions of the Hall of Presidents, because it has had many updates over the years for obvious reasons. So the original version, it first opened up on October 1st, 1971, and it ran up until 1993, and I believe that was the year that Bill Clinton was elected president. With the helping of paintings from the era, the Philadelphia Convention is reenacted. George Washington and Benjamin Franklin are heard making speeches to the convention. They assured all that this government was going to be different. After the formation of the Constitution, the first test of the new republic was the Whiskey Rebellion, which proved that the government would use force to ensure domestic tranquility. Years later, President Andrew Jackson was the first to deal with secession, or the breakaway, if you want to call it, by the southern states. Luckily, the talk was stopped and Jackson escaped the threat. The movie then segues to the time of Abraham Lincoln, when secession was a real threat. These paintings and vocal performances are similar, if not identical, to the same segment in Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. The American Civil War portion of the presentation is based on the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln presentation, including a nearly identical script, although to fit the much bigger screen of the theater, rather than the much smaller one at Disneyland, new paintings were required to fill the screen. The Constitution survived the conflict, making America a truly unified nation. A huge era of progress occurred after the war. All the while, the Constitution remained the tentpole of the country. The movie then turns toward the future, saying that the leaders of tomorrow have to be committed to the Constitution and its principles if the country is to survive. A Saturn V rocket takes off, and the screens then lift up, and the U.S. presidents take center stage. After the curtain lifts, all presidents are called in chronological order. Each one responds to their name with a nod, wave, or other sign of acknowledgement. During the presentation, the presidents fidget, talk to each other, and look around, all the while making the illusion seem quite real. Abraham Lincoln then stands and takes center stage. His speech is remarkably similar to the speech he gave in Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. After his speech, the show concludes with a rendition of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. The show remained virtually unchanged from 1971 until October of 1993. Additional audio animatronic figures of Gerald R. Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, and George H.W. Bush were then added when each entered into office. Lawrence Dobkin continued to be the narrator and re-recorded the roll call for each new edition. The only major feature that changed before 1993 was the original adaptation of the Battle Hymn of the Republic that served as part of the finale of the show. It was the same adaptation used in Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. The adaptation was done in a lower key and instead changed for a revised adaptation in a higher key. So let us now talk about the Bill Clinton administration version of the attraction, which operated from 1993 until 2001. The show closed in early September 1993 and was then completely renovated and reopened in October of 1993 after Bill Clinton had been elected to office. The changes to the show are credited to Eric Foner, a history professor at Columbia University. He persuaded various Disney executives, most notably then Disney CEO Michael Eisner, that a new adaptation of the show was needed. Foner is responsible for completely rewriting and changing the script of the show in order to focus more on slavery and other ethical and civil related issues in the United States of America. He is also responsible for rewriting Lincoln's speech, which was originally nearly identical to that which Lincoln gave in the original version of Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. Bill Clinton also became the first president to provide his voice to recite a speech for his audio animatronic figure. Every president after him has followed the same as they have entered office, with the exception of Joe Biden, who did not record remarks. Every president since Barack Obama has also provided their voice to recite the presidential oath of office. While the format of the show remained in the sense of the photos, films, and other features used in the movie and elsewhere in the presentation, the speed at which the films played and what was shown on them was redone to fit the changed script, and a new music score was also introduced. Also, prominent members of the Walt Disney Company would no longer narrate parts of the movie. Instead, Maya Angelou narrated the revised script and gave the roll call of the presidents. New and mature actors gave the voices of the characters in the movie. Another feature that was added in 1993 was a speech given by the incumbent president. Foner is also responsible for writing the speech which President Clinton himself recorded at the White House. Followed by the incumbent president's speech, Abraham Lincoln would give the completely revised speech written by Foner. The Lincoln audio animatronic figure was also given eyeglasses and held a piece of paper to glance to and from his speech. Some objected to this, saying that it dumbed down the depiction of Lincoln as a prominent and iconic figure. During the 1993 refurbishment of the attraction, Royal Dano, who was the original voice of Lincoln in the Hall of Presidents and Great Moments of Mr. Lincoln at the World's Fair and early versions of the attraction at Disneyland had become sick and was not able to record Lincoln's revised speech. Instead, voice actor Peter Renaday was tasked to voice Abraham Lincoln. So let's move on to the George W. Bush administration version of the attraction, which ran from 2001 to 2009. For the 2001 update to the show, adding President George W. Bush in his speech, actor J.D. Hall replaced Maya Angelou as the narrator, but he read from the same script as the 1993 version. The audio animatronic figure created for President Bill Clinton in 1993 was recycled and used for President George W. Bush. So let's move on to the Barack Obama administration version of the attraction, which ran from 2009 to 2017. The Hall of Presidents closed October 31st, 2008, prior to the general elections, to undergo an extensive renovation to upgrade its audio and visual effects and systems, as well as the addition of the next president. After his election and inauguration, President Barack Obama recorded his speech for the attraction on March 4th, 2009. He also recorded himself once again reciting the oath of office of the President of the United States. Walt Disney Imagineering recorded Obama's remarks in the White House map room, as well as his facial expressions and body movement to serve as reference for the creation and animation of the audio animatronic. The Obama version of the attraction opened on July 4th, 2009, on the 233rd anniversary of the independence of the United States. Morgan Freeman replaced J.D. Hall as narrator for the 2009 revised show. Royal Dano's performance as Abraham Lincoln was restored, and George Washington was added as a third speaking president. The clip of the Saturn V launch was replaced with footage showing the first launch of the Space Shuttle Columbia. This footage had been recycled from the original version of Universe of Energy attraction at Epcot. Let's move on to the Donald Trump administration version of the attraction, which ran from 2017 to 2021. The attraction closed on January 17th, 2017 for refurbishment and the addition of an audio animatronic figure of President Donald Trump. It reopened on December 19th, 2017 after many delays. The movie presented is titled The Idea of a President, depicting a historical account of several American presidencies, notably George Washington, Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and John F. Kennedy. After the roll call of all past presidents, Washington gives a short speech, followed by Trump reciting the oath of office and a short speech. Let's move on to the Joe Biden administration version of the attraction, which ran from 2021 until 2024. On January 19th, 2021, it was announced that the Hall of Presidents had closed for refurbishment, with many media outlets pointing to the addition of President Joe Biden to the attraction. On July 19th, 2021, Disney announced that President Joe Biden would be added to the Hall of Presidents, which reopened on August 3rd, 2021. The film The Idea of a President, which precedes the roll call of presidents, was kept for the Biden incarnation. Biden provides his own voice to recite the oath of office following George Washington's speech. However, unlike past versions, Biden delivers no follow-up remarks. And as we all know, if anybody has been watching the news, former President Donald Trump has been reelected as the next president for the next 4 years, so that'll be his second term. And what I'm assuming, if Disney hasn't already done this, they have already shut down the attraction to make the changes. They'll probably just do a switch, which is what I'm thinking. So Joe Biden will go in the back where Donald Trump was standing, and then they'll bring Donald Trump right back to the front. That's what I'm thinking. So it shouldn't be closed for that long. If anybody knows, let me know in the comments at least. So let's talk about the Hall of Presidents in regards to in television. The Hall of Presidents is briefly parodied in the segment Flautist Flautist, What Do You Know About Us? Of Season 1, Episode 13 of the 2020 reboot of Animaniacs, where Dot Warner attempts to sing about the First Ladies of the United States, from Martha Washington to Melania Trump, and their accomplishments in under 2 minutes. Don't forget that the Animaniacs, if you're a 90s kid, they did a tribute to the American presidents from George Washington up to Bill Clinton, because Animaniacs was on in the early 90s. I mean, Bill Clinton is even in the original Animaniacs theme song, so you got to remember that portion at least. Also, the attraction is one of various featured in the Disney Plus docuseries Behind the Attraction, produced by Dwayne Johnson. The episode dedicated to the attraction was released on August 25th, 2021. So my experience with this attraction, I always enjoy sitting and watching like this amazing Fallout show. I am a big history buff, obviously. I'm telling you guys about the history of anything related to Disney. So I do love some history and learning about how America had its struggles and what they've overcome and what they have done as a country, and to learn what the presidents, like certain presidents, have gone through to keep that country, the changes that they've come up with to keep that country the way that it is. It's just like astounding to me. And like, it's obviously a lot of responsibility to run an entire country. Like, that's a lot of pressure. But I always enjoy like going and listening to the various versions of the show. So I think we saw the show once in 2016. I don't remember, or I think we just didn't have the time to do it. But I do remember, so the versions that I have seen the Barack Obama, the Donald Trump, and the Joe Biden versions of the show. So Barack Obama was still president in 2016, and then I saw the Donald Trump version in the 2019 version, and then I saw the Joe Biden in 2021 when I went on my honeymoon. So it was like very like different to see like all of the amazing things, especially during that moment where they give the acknowledgement to all of the presidents that have served America since America became a country. That is just an amazing tribute, and you just see like the many, 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 many men that have been a part of the history of America. And sadly, America has just lost one of its former presidents, President Jimmy Carter, who passed away at 100 years old. That is just astounding. I have been watching the news, and Jimmy Carter's funeral is set for January 9th of 2025. So hopefully you guys will have a chance to watch the highlights that it tributes. What America does to honor the former presidents once they've died, it is also like astounding. It's like giving them their respects. Like, yes, you were president. Yes, you ran our country. Yes, you did an amazing job, depending on what Americans think of that certain president. So if you like this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. And I hope you have a zippity doo dah day. Goodbye.